Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Just going to wait on a few people to arrive in the live stream, and we will then get going to discuss some of the essential offboarding steps that you may want to perform when you are exiting a user within Google Workspace. So we'll just hold on for a few minutes and then get into things. Okay, let's get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So today we're going to talk about the offboarding steps when it comes to working with Google Workspace, and we're going to show you how, with Patronum, you can effectively and quickly and securely offboard levers, regardless of whether they are a good lever or a bad lever. And we'll cover some of the essential offboarding steps that and cover some of the ones that you may not have realized that you're able to do and the implications of those. So my name is Paul Lees, and I am the CEO of Besbin Labs, and we're the developers and designers of Patronum, a Google Workspace management tool. Well, before we go into a demo of the product, let me just talk to you briefly about what we believe offboarding is all about. And it's really part of the user's life cycle. And so typically, an individual will join an organization, they start from a HR perspective, and they are then added into the system. We're focusing predominantly on Google Workspace. So we're going to give the individual an email address. And then as they go through the organization, things like email signatures, settings, files, folders, calendars, etc. They're all then provided to that new user. As the user works in the organization, they may move around, they may progress, get promoted, change departments, and that in itself is part of the life cycle of a user. And we also need to understand what happens when a user changes job role or changes department. And from a Patronum perspective, we can make sure that additional resources are allocated and resources are removed from the user as part of that journey. But today we're mainly focused on the offboarding process of the user and what happens when a user leaves the organization, and how do you do that securely while also retaining access to the information and the data that that individual user has created during their lifetime working in the organization. So we're going to jump into a demo very shortly, and within the demo, we're going to show you a couple of steps that we think are important from an offboarding perspective. So first of all, notification, informing the manager and other individuals in the organization that the individual user will be leaving. the company, and also showing you how you can set up approval processes for that action. We're then going to show you how you can then securely restrict the user and secure that account so that the leaver no longer has access to the data. We'll then show you how you can transfer the data, the file data, from one user to another, even to a Google shared drive. We're going to show you how you can get all that set up, and we're also going to show you how you can clean up the information inside of Google. And then once all of that has been performed, scheduling a deletion of the account in order to reclaim the licensing back from Google, so that that can then be deployed and given to new employees as they start in the organization. Okay, so the first step will be, and what I will show you is, we're going to have a policy inside of Patronum which will notify the manager 7 days before the individual leaver is due to leave the organization. We're also going to show you how you can then perform an additional backup. Now, the backup solution that we integrate with, it runs 3 times a day, but it's always nice to have an additional backup just in case, to make sure that everything is backed up on the day or the week before the individual user will be leaving. And then, in order to help with the transition, we're going to show you how you can allocate delegate access to the user's manager so that they can gain access to the Gmail account of the leaver prior to them leaving the organization. Once that's done, when the leaver actually leaves on the evening of their last day, Patronum will then send an email request to the manager to agree and approve that this is the correct user. This user is going to be leaving the organization. We're then going to show you how you can remove the user from all Google groups, transfer any group management. We're going to remove any calendar events that those users have been sent. We will also remove the user from any Google contacts, individual users' Google contacts. We'll also show you how you can remove the user from any Google chat spaces, as well as transfer any chat space management. We'll set up a vacation response for the individual user. We will remove any additional delegate access, and we'll verify that delegate access is still being given to the manager. And then we will go ahead and secure the account by resetting the user's password, clearing third-party applications, removing the email and telephone recovery details, signing the user out of all the devices, wiping those devices, and also removing them from any Google admin roles that they may have been given as part of their existence in the organization. Now, that was for a good leaver. Now, what happens if your leaver is a bad leaver? Again, we'll show you in Patronum how, through what we call an emergency offboarding policy, you'll be able to immediately terminate an account and follow a different path for that leaver. We can follow all the good leavers policies, plus we can also transfer any calendar appointments to the manager. Contacts can be transferred over to the manager. We can transfer all drive data to the manager, as well as any Looker Studio data. We can also give access to the manager of any external files that that user was working on, as well as remove any external sharing from the account. We will also rename that account and redirect any emails that will be coming into that account to a Google group, so that the manager can then receive emails while we then offboard this bad leaver correctly. Once that's been performed, we're then going to wait 14 days while the organization checks and responds to any emails that the individual was working on. Once that has happened, we can then go through the Google directory and clear all the profile information. We can transfer all those calendars over to the manager, as well as transferring any Google groups to the manager. Now, because this user is a good leaver, we're going to transfer any private files to the manager, while at the same time transferring any files that they were sharing to a shared drive. We're going to grant the manager access to any external files that the user was working with external organizations on. We're also going to remove any external access from those files. we're going to remove their access from any shared files internally. And again, just like the bad lever, we will rename the account in order to allow incoming emails to now be transferred to a Google group in which the manager can now deal with them directly, as opposed to doing it by proxy through the user's account via delegation. We'll then also lastly remove the device and also assign an archive user license to that user in order to reduce our licensing cost from a Google Workspace perspective. And then the last stage in the process, after we've waited 180 days, is to then clean up all of the email forwarding that has been set up so that we now no longer need to deal with any emails that are coming in to the individual, and we can then comfortably delete that particular account. So with that, what I would like to do is show you how we can do all of this within Patronum. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen again. These are the policies that we have configured for the offboarding process that we've just discussed. And so the first one that I'd like to explore is the notification part of the process. And so inside the policy, we have the workflow environment, and the workflow defines how we are going to target the particular users. Now, as we can see, the scope of the workflow is for all the users inside our organization. However, we could identify or specify the particular organizational units if we had a different method in which we were going to trigger the offboarding approach. Now, because this is an alert process, we're going to use the end date attribute, and we're going to say 7 days before this particular date, and we're going to just drive an action from that date. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to notify the manager, and we've already pre-configured a template, which is to notify the manager of the user that is leaving, to remind the manager to obtain any hardware or assets that the individual user has allocated or been allocated. We're then going to have a look at the settings section. And in the settings section, here is where we can configure the delegate access. So I can just expand the delegate access section. And here, by clicking on the small icon here, gives us the option to just provide delegate access to the executor, and we've identified the executor as the manager. So with this configuration, the manager is now going to get delegate access to the leaver 7 days before they actually leave the organization, in order to help them with any handover of particular customers or particular projects. And we're also going to, like I mentioned, enable a backup so that the backup can run for this particular user, just to make sure that if a backup hasn't been configured, we can then make sure that a backup has been performed of this user prior to them leaving the organization. And so that's the first step in our offboarding approach. So the second part of the offboarding are the actual offboarding steps. And so we've got these 3 policies here, which are steps 1, 2, and 3. So the first policy, again, it's targeted at all users in the organization, but the end date here is targeted for users that are leaving today. So it's based off today's date. And so we're going to deprovision this particular user or these users when the end date is today. We also need to configure the approval process. As I mentioned in the slides, we're going to send an email to the manager to ask them that this user is leaving and for them to approve that particular process. Now, if the manager isn't available, or there isn't a manager for this particular account, well, we're going to reassign the task. And for this particular reassignment, we're going to wait 2 days. And then we're going to send the request over to Paul, and Paul will then approve the particular request. Now, we can have different options here. We could delete the task or reassign it to somebody else. But for this particular example, we're just going to continue if Paul fails to respond after the set dates of a day to respond to that particular request. And then we go through each of the sections and we decide which assets we would like to remove or delegate as part of the offboarding process. So the first area that we're going to configure is the group section. And in the group section, we are going to transfer any groups that this particular user is the manager of, and we're going to transfer those. Again, we're going to transfer them through to the manager, and we're also going to remove the user from any Google groups that they have been added to during the course of their work life in the organization. We're then going to have a look at the calendar section, and because this is just step one in the process, all we're going to do is remove the lever from other people's appointments. So if people in the organization have sent an appointment to this individual user, there's no point in that individual user being an attendee of those particular appointments. So we're going to actively remove that individual from those appointments that they have been sent. Under the contact section, we're going to, again, just to clean things up, we're going to remove the lever from everybody else's Google contacts. This then prevents any false type aheads that may occur due to Google caching the contact details in end users Google contacts. And so we're going to go through all the Google contacts in the entire Google system and remove those contacts, or remove the levers contacts from everybody's Google contacts. We're then also going to go into the settings section where we can configure the vacation response, delegation, and also secure the account. So the first one is the vacation response, and we've just put a little message here that says this account is no longer active, please contact, and it will then pick up the manager's email address. That will then be part of their auto response for a period of time while the account is being potentially worked on, just to hand over any emails or any work, etc. From a delegation point of view, we're going to have a little more delegation than we had in the first stage of the process. We're going to remove any delegates that that had access to this particular user's account, and we're also going to remove any delegates that had access from this particular account. So both in and out will be removed by Patronum, and we're also then going to verify that the manager still has delegate access. But we could, if we wanted to, just remove all access at this particular point. One of the other areas that we were also going to look at is to secure the account. So this is the first day of their leaving, and so what we're going to do is we are going to secure the account, and we do that by pretty much selecting every single option in this particular section. So we're going to delete the two-step verification backup codes. We're going to delete any third-party applications, any app-specific passwords. We're going to delete and reset the password. We're going to remove the email and telephone recovery details. Again, this is important because what we don't want to do is we don't want to start emailing the leavers personal account to say that we've just changed your email address or we've just changed your password, etc. So let's clear those attributes out from the Google directory. We're going to force the user to be signed out of all of the devices that they are logged into our Google account with. We're also going to hide the user in the Google address book so that nobody can then accidentally type their name and send things or share information with the account. We're going to move the user to an offboarding organizational unit, and this is important because The rest of our policies are going to be based on the fact that the users are now moving from one organizational unit to another, and we can then drive the triggers based on the fact that we are moving users through the organizational structure, and we can quite clearly identify where all our users reside, as well as which users are in a state of being offboarded. We're also going to look at the chat spaces and also remove the user from any Google chat spaces as well. We could also, at this point, remove the user from any Google roles that they have been assigned in the admin console. So again, just making sure that the account has been locked down and all groups and security privileges have been revoked. And so that's step one of our offboarding process. So now we've got an account which can't log in because the password's been reset, has been logged out of all of the devices. They've also had calendar information reset, removed from Google Groups. They've been removed from Google Spaces. A vacation response has been specified, etc. So now we can move on to step two, which is the most important part of the offboarding process, which is all focused around transferring of data. This particular step, we've decided to, again, configure it for anybody in the offboarding organizational unit, but now we're waiting for the user to be signed out or not having logged in for 14 days. Now, this is one method in which we can trigger. We could also use the end date to say 14 days after the end date. My personal preference is to use the signed in date because it allows me to potentially log into the account, and then that resets the trigger for a further 14 days, just in case there's been an emergency where we need to potentially resurrect the account, etc. We don't want to perform any major actions such as deletions or data transfers if the account still needs to be worked on. So that's why I've picked the last signed in date to be greater than 14 days. In the action section here, in the action section, because we're going to build the policy, we can at this stage change the options from an executive perspective. So calendars are being transferred to the manager, but we can decide whether or not, if the manager doesn't exist, we can fail that over to an admin or a user. But once we've done that, we can then just again go through the tabs, and this time we're going to decide what additional actions we are going to take at this particular junction in the offboarding process. Now, let me just stop for a second. This is quite a complicated offboarding approach. Many organizations have much simpler offboarding policies, which typically involve one or two policies. But what I wanted to demonstrate and show was the power and the flexibility of Patronum that allows you to create very, very elaborate and complex offboarding policies which match and marry typical real world scenarios that we have seen with many of our customers. So from a profile related perspective, Patronum allows you to remove any of the Google directory information from the account. Again, this might be useful if you are planning on retaining the account as an archived user, or suspending the user, or changing the user to a free internet cloud identity license. You may not want to have potential personal information associated with the account details. So we're going to remove all the standard Google directory information. We're going to remove the photo, any custom attributes, and also any email aliases will be removed at this particular point. We've already removed the user from all the Google groups. So we're going to have a look at the calendar options here. So from a calendaring perspective, we've already removed the attendee from any appointments that they have been sent. So now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer the calendars to the manager. and again, the executor here has been identified as the manager. We're going to transfer all of those appointments to the manager, all the calendar to the manager. We're also going to transfer any secondary calendars to the executor, again, the manager, as well as remove the user from any calendars that they have been shared on. Just simply walking through the tabs, this option here, we're now going to have a look and transfer any contacts that this particular user may have stored in their Google directory. Any contact sharing that may have been set up, we could have transferred that as well. And we're going to, again, just remove the ex-employee from everybody's Google contacts, just in case the individual user has been added accidentally or automatically by Google to users' Google contacts. Now, from a files perspective, this is the important part when it comes to retaining data. And within Patronum, we're giving you lots of options here around the types of data you can transfer and where you can transfer that data. So this policy has already been configured, but let me just jump into a few examples. So here, the Looker Studio data will be transferred to the manager. I'm going to open this one up here. So any data that has not been shared externally or internally, we can class that as private information. And so we don't necessarily want to transfer that information to a central archived shared drive. So we're going to transfer this information over to the manager, and the manager can then decide whether or not the files that the individual user was working on and hasn't yet shared are important, need to be shared, or need to be just deleted. And so what we're going to do, we're going to transfer only the unshared files into the manager's Google Drive, and we're going to put a label on those or put them into a folder with the name of the user's first name and last name. We're also going to transfer any shared data, as we can see here, the shared data, and we're going to transfer that over to a shared drive. The shared drive is called archived users, and again, we're going to use the user's first name and last name in order to create a directory in that shared drive in order to copy that data across. And again, we're going to notify the manager once that particular action has been completed. In addition to which, any external files that the user was working on, we're going to give the manager access to those external files. So if your leaver was working with an external organization, the individual user will then be given access to those particular files. Any files that they were working on that were shared externally, we're going to unshare those. Again, from a bad leaver's perspective, that this could be important, as the bad leaver may have shared specific data with themselves via a Gmail account, and so this particular step can avoid those files being left out in the open for too long. And we're also going to remove access to any shared files that the user was collaborating with internally. They're no longer needed, so we can clean all that internal sharing up as well. In the settings section, one of the things that we are going to do in the security part is, again, we're going to move the user. So we're going to move the user from the offboarding OU into the to be removed organizational unit. And again, we can then trigger events based on that. And we're going to rename the account. We're going to take the user's username, which is the part before the @ of their email address, and we're going to append the word leaver to that, but we could use any format. Some organizations use VFL for Vault free licensing as an extension. Again, it's entirely up to you how you rename the accounts. Patronum supports any way in which you can rename an account, both in front, behind the username. You could even use a generic ID if you want to remove the user's name from your organization in order to comply with GDPR requirements. We're then going to create a Google group based off the user's email address. And We're then going to add the manager as a manager to that Google group, and also create a label and a filter in the manager's Gmail in order to identify any emails that are coming in to that particular Google group. And this will allow any emails that are being sent into the organization for the leaver to be then rerouted via the Google group to the manager. In the advanced settings, you may want to configure additional options such as the permissions of the particular Google group. Is it a public group, etc. Some of the things that I would typically recommend are to hide the group from the Google address book, as well as potentially allowing external posts to the Google group so that externals can then email that email address inside the organization if you're adding multiple users to that particular Google group. In addition to the settings section, we also want to remove the mobile device from the Google directory in order to just clean up the Google directory from mobile devices just being left stale in the system. And we also want to assign an archive user license. So we're going to specify a business starter, which is the license type that we are on, and we're going to assign a business starter license to this particular user in order to, again, reduce our license costs because we're going to retain this particular user for a considerable amount of time in order to retain their vault information, etc. Okay, so now the account, or the account that is leaving the organization, has been securely locked down. Passwords have been changed. The data has been transferred from the file system. Files have been transferred over to the manager and also to a shared drive. We've removed the mobile information, and we've allocated a archive license to that particular user. So now what we're going to do is we're going to identify or create a policy that targets the to be removed users. And we're going to say the users that were last logged in 190 days ago, and let's say we're only interested in the ones that have been archived. So archived equals true. And so this will then target only the users that have not logged in for 180 days that have also been archived by the previous step in the policy. And then quite simply, all we need to do in this particular policy is, from a settings perspective, we're going to go again into the security section, and we're going to remove any of the auto-assigned email aliases or Google groups that we previously assigned to the user. Again, these steps are often overlooked, but they are hugely important in order to comply with GDPR regulations. GDPR indicates or suggests that you should not keep personal information for longer than is deemed necessary. And so somebody's name is personal and it identifies that particular individual. So you should really remove that information from your organization as promptly as is feasible and possible. And then we're also going to delete the account from the system. And so that's pretty much it. From a offboarding perspective, we've now completely gone through the whole process of notifying the manager, a nice gentle step through process where the first thing that we do is lock the account down. We then transfer the data, allocate a archive license, and then finally, after a number of days, we then delete the account, as well as tidying up the account from an email alias perspective. That only leaves me to just jump into the suggested bad levers approach. And again, the bad levers, you would bring everything together that we've already gone through, such as clearing the profile information, clearing the Google Groups, transferring all of the appointments, removing the user from the appointments. Because we want to potentially analyze the files that the individual user was working on, we might not want to transfer the data just yet to a shared drive. We can transfer that to the manager, and the manager can then be responsible for looking through any of those particular files, as well as removing any external access to their files, so that if the user has been sharing files with themselves or with another organization, that then gets removed as part of the offboarding process. And again, you can assign backups, you can remove them from particular roles, lock down the account from a settings perspective, looking at the security options, etc. Okay, well, that brings me to the end of this particular presentation. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully that was useful, and that only leaves me to now ask if this prompted any interest or any questions. Please feel free to schedule a call with us by visiting the website besbinlabs.com or patronum.io. Click on the schedule a call, and you can arrange for a meeting with one of the team in order to go through a demo, or respond to any of the particular questions that you have. So with that, thank you very much.